Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Blaine Conzatti, and I serve as president of Idaho Family Policy Center. We are excited to partner with Representative Hill on this important legislation, and we believe that this will be the last step in making sure that the privacy and safety of every person is protected in all public restrooms and changing facilities across the state. During the print hearing last week, I think there might have been some confusion as to how House Bill 607 would operate. And so my hope is that we're able to clear up all that confusion today. So let's take a look at the bill really fast to walk through it. You'll notice it's divided into two sections. So Section 1 creates statewide policy requiring separate restrooms and changing areas for biological males and biological females in every government building. So Section 1 is focused on government buildings. And to give you an idea on the types of government buildings that would fall under the scope of Section 1, that would include things like state office buildings, municipal airports, highway rest areas, fire and police stations, public libraries, recreational facilities like state campgrounds or municipal skating rinks or city pools. So that is Section 1, focused on government buildings. If you turn with me really fast to page 4 and take a look at Section 67-4808, you'll see there that we have exempted public schools, public universities, domestic violence shelters, state correctional facilities. And the reason why is because those entities are dealt with through Senate Bill 1100 that the legislature passed in 2023, our school bathroom legislation, and then House Bill 264, which is the Women's Privacy Act that was passed by the legislature in 2025. So those entities are already dealt with in a very similar manner. So now let's talk about Section 2. Section 2 deals with places of public accommodation. And here we're taking a different approach, right? Section 1 was just a blanket statewide policy, separate bathrooms and locker rooms and changing areas for biological males and biological females. In Section 2, what we're doing is we're simply clarifying that the common law doctrine of premises liability extends to all public restrooms and changing areas in places of public accommodation. And I think most people here are probably at least vaguely familiar with the doctrine of premises liability. As you probably know, for hundreds of years now, the courts have held that property owners have a duty of care to maintain their premises in a reasonably safe manner for their guests or customers or invitees. And this concept of premises liability is a common law doctrine. It has existed in American law since before our nation's founding. It's existed here in Idaho since our earliest days as a territory. So again, there's nothing new here. Premises liability has existed in the English-speaking world literally for hundreds of years. What we're doing here is we're clarifying that pre-existing duty under premises liability extends to taking reasonable steps to maintaining safe restrooms and changing areas for biological males and biological females in places of public accommodations. So we've received some questions like how could a place of public accommodation comply with the duty of care clarified in this legislation. And I think it's important to note right out of the gate that we're not dictating exactly what types of policies the places of public accommodation would need to adopt or what they would need to do. And that's intentional. And that's because we want to strike the right balance between private property rights and maintaining safety and privacy for all people. So what we've done here, instead of dictating policy, is we've, again, clarified that they have that duty to maintain safe restrooms and changing facilities. And that could be something as simple as posting signs right outside the men's restroom and the women's restroom, adopting a policy that individuals must use the restrooms of their biological sex, and then when the business owner is notified that someone is violating the policy, just enforce the policy, right? And if that requires having someone trespassed off or asking them to leave, that's all a business owner would need to do under the duty of care that's clarified here in House Bill 607. It's really as simple as that. And breaching that duty would result in civil liability. And there, I think, again, it's important to emphasize that the private cause of action, it's basically the same type of enforcement mechanism that's been used in premises liability for hundreds of years, right? Again, this is just normal tort negligence action. This has been very common in American law. We also have some common sense real world exemptions. Every exemption you could possibly think of, I think we've included that's needed. I know during the print hearing there's some confusion as to whether a hypothetical older gentleman who had to go, where would he go if the men's restroom was closed down for janitorial service or whatever? And the answer is, under our legislation, we have an exemption for those scenarios when one set of restrooms is unavailable and the only other restroom that's reasonably available is the restroom of the other biological sex. All the older gentleman would have to do when he was using the women's restroom was just make sure that no women were in there. And that would fall under the exemption that we've provided in this legislation. We also have exemptions for when parents take their children to the restroom. We have exemptions for when people with disabilities need assistance from a caregiver. We have an exemption for when a restroom or changing area is being cleaned. We have an exemption for when someone needs medical assistance, for when law enforcement is needed. All these scenarios and more, we have exemptions in the legislation already. And then the last thing that I want to mention, because this came up during the print hearing as well, and I think this is really important, federal courts have ruled that the privacy interest of restroom users actually extends beyond the four walls of the bathroom stall. So that privacy interest extends into the common areas of the restroom. In fact, here in the U.S. District of Idaho, the federal district court judge, David Nye, in his recent Jones v. Critchfield decision, here's what he said, and I think it's important for you guys to hear this. Privacy in restrooms is not limited to ensuring that another person cannot see into the stall a person is using to relieve themselves. Individuals undertake other personal duties in the communal areas of restrooms and are entitled to privacy there as well. So that's Judge David Nye, the federal district court judge here in the U.S. District of Idaho, saying that an individual's privacy interest extends outside of the bathroom stall into those communal areas. And I think this is confirmed by our everyday experience, right? We often use the communal areas of restrooms to change our clothes, to put on deodorant. Men oftentimes are shaving in the communal areas of restrooms. Other discrete hygienic tasks that we do in bathrooms, we tend to do in those communal areas. I've even had to, here at the Capitol, I've spilled coffee on my slacks, and I had to run into the bathroom and quickly wash it out, right, to make sure the stain didn't set and make sure I was ready for my next meeting. So those sorts of tasks are other tasks that we're doing in restrooms where we would expect a level of privacy, right, especially from the other biological sex. And just to drive this point home, we're not worried only about sexual assault and voyeurism and exhibitionism, although we are worried about those things. But we're also worried about protecting privacy and dignity, because every person has a natural right to both safety and to privacy in public restrooms and changing areas. So as Representative Hill said, this legislation is supported by more than 77% of likely Idaho voters. It's the largest margin I've ever seen on an issue. It's a winning issue. It's a common sense issue. And I hope you'll send it to the floor with a do pass recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Conzatti.